I stepped right on top of that IED out in the middle of the field, and I remember myself go flipping through the air and the heat crawling up my back, and felt like 10,000 little pricklies, running up my back. And I finally hit the ground, and I had the wind knocked out of me once on the way up and once on the way down when I hit the ground again. And I was looking at my left arm all blown out, and I could see how bad it was bleeding. I needed a tourniquet for it. And I was trying to reach back to my first aid kit, but my shoulder was broken, my forearm was broken on my left side. I just couldn't move it. So I knew I had another tourniquet in my night vision pouch, and I had to get a tourniquet on my left arm. And I was trying to get that pouch open, and I was like, what in the heck is going on? And I looked over, and my whole arm was snapped in half on the right side. And every time my heart beat, it was spraying blood out of my forearm. And I realized I didn't have any hands, and I had no idea my legs were even hurt yet.
Yeah.
And about this time, my buddy Daniels, he came sliding in on top of me, and he jumped on top of me, and he started tourniqueting my arms off. And the whole time he was doing that, I was like, hey, man, you got to get off my boys. You're pinching my stuff. And what he's doing is he has knees in my femoral arteries trying to pinch those off. Well, he was tourniqueting my arms, and he's working on me. And about that time, Doc slid in, and Doc started going to work on me. And when he cut my gear off of me, that's when I sat up to try to get out of there. That's when I seen how bad a shape I was in. My right leg was completely tore off. My left leg from the knee down was just about gone, and I was hurting pretty bad. And about that, the whole time we're getting shot at, and we're eating rounds out there, and luckily nobody was hit, and they're putting tourniquets on all my limbs, and Doc's getting a ratchet strap around my right leg, and I just remember getting more and more tired and more thirsty, and I shaking my head left, right, just trying to do a conscious effort to stay alive. And finally, I just, kind of said, I'm not going to make it, and I kind of told my guys, it's everybody back home. I love them. And I started seeing my whole life start flashing before my eyes, stuff as little as, 4 or 5 years old. And next thing you know, I hear the rotors popping on that helicopter, and I'm like, man, I can't die right before that thing gets here. They picked me up, and they hauled me to the chopper and threw me in the back of the chopper. And I see my team leader laying back there. He took a big hunk of steel, came flying out of that IED, and hit him on the shoulder and the head, and broke his shoulder and gave him a pretty bad concussion. And he was laying back there, and I remember the flight medic jumping on top of me as we took off, and he put a fast one right in my sternum and started feeding me fluids through my sternum. And everybody's like, this is going to hurt. And I thought, what can you do to me to hurt me, And he punched that right in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so alive. I got so much fight left in me. And we finally landed at the airfield in Kandahar, and when they pulled me out of that helicopter, they put me in the back of this truck. And the surgeon in the back of that truck told me if I could stay awake for 5 more minutes, he promised me my life. And I was like, bet, I'll take that.
Yep.
And next thing you know, I'm on the operating room table, and they're prepping me for surgery. And this anesthesiologist is trying to knock me out, and I'm fighting him. And he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I got a bet with a guy. And he came over, and he told me my 5 minutes was up. And next thing you know, I wake up in San Antonio 6 days later, the whole family standing around me, confused, thinking they're in Afghanistan,
They're like, how'd you get here?
I was like, what are you doing here? I'm sure how bad it is, And before you know it, I'm first words out of my mouth were, what do I got to do to get out of here? I didn't want to be in the hospital.
Yep.
And I spent 2 weeks out in the ICU, and I endured 20 operations while I was in there, and I spent about 2 months total in the hospital. And it was a grind, nothing in my life was the same when I woke up. All 4 of my limbs have been ripped off. They were able to attach my right arm pretty good. I don't really have much function in my right hand. I lost my thumb and my index finger on my right hand. And but I still have my hand is still there, and it helps. And I put together my left arm back pretty good, and super lucky and fortunate over there. And my right leg, it's real short. They got about 6 or 8 inches of femur left, and my left knee is just a couple inches up from where my left leg is amputated right above my knee, a couple inches up from where it used to be. And every time I share that story, it's really just it's about the guys that drugged me off the battlefield that day. They're the true heroes that day that stepped up and risked their lives to save mine. And I was really at at that point in my life, I really finally figured out what it meant to feel like I was helpless. I really couldn't do anything for myself at that point in time. Even
Yep.
save my own life. And if those guys want to risk their lives to save mine, I wouldn't be here today.